Hello and welcome to Success is Never Accidental. I'm Lynn Payton and I'm passionate about helping individuals and organisations to get better outcomes. And it's my belief that success in any organisation or indeed any endeavour is down to strong leadership qualities. On this podcast, I get to interview some highly successful leaders from across the globe and across all industries so that we can better understand their formula for success and understand some of the characteristics. My guest today is Reynold Lewke, a simply remarkable individual who seems to excel in every arena he steps into. In his professional life, he's known for building high-impact startup teams. In his sporting life, he continues to set extraordinary standards, most recently completing his 27th Ironman. For anyone unfamiliar, an Ironman is one of those demanding endurance events in the world. A 2.4-mile swim, a 112-mile cycle race, and a full 26.2-mile marathon. Reynold's approach to life is grounded in resilience, discipline, and genuine grit. He believes that perseverance outperforms pure talent, and that philosophy shapes how he lives, works, and leads. With more than 30 years' experience in coaching and executive search, he has partnered with global leaders across the US, Europe, and Asia, helping them to build outstanding teams and unlock their potential, both professionally and personally. Today, he's on another ambitious mission to coach 10,000 professional women back into the workforce, into roles where they can create real impact. Reynold, it was so amazing to catch up with you in LA recently, and thank you so much for coming on our show today.
Well, it's my pleasure and my honor to be with you because you are such a ray of sunshine wherever you go. So I'm all honored to be here.
Thank you so much. Well, here we were talking about your latest Ironman, so why don't we start there? Just tell us a little bit about what kind of discipline and grit you need, not just to do one Ironman, but to keep doing them year after year like you do.
Well, I'll, if you'll permit me, I'll go back and get a little history there. Is I hit 40 and it was this question of I couldn't go to the gym anymore. I was bored. I couldn't do it. And I came across this book called Triathlon for Ordinary Mortals, written by this general practitioner who was in his early 50s and started doing them. And I'd had this vision of, triathlon, especially Ironman, as being this distant goal only for superheroes. And I started, and what I discovered was that it's swim, bike, and run. And I grew up in a family where everyone is a doctor or in medicine. My father was a family practitioner and also in emergency medicine and orthopedics and sports medicine. And he was a guy who, when I was 6, started this program of at least twice a week we had to go for a 1-mile run with him before breakfast. So I've been in lifetime athletics and what have you. So I started exploring it. And as I did, this led me into this whole issue of, so what is health as opposed to curing sickness? How do we get away from the only things we treat is what we have a prescription for? And how do we look at life from a more holistic perspective? So that's what started it. And I just enjoy the rhythm and also the discipline because at my core, I'm an engineer. So I do projects. I need a destination. I need something to occupy me. And what I found was I started with the sprint triathlons, which are, less than a mile swim, about 20, 24 miles on the bike, and then 6 miles on the run. That's in kilometers. That's a 1K swim and a 40K bike and a 10K run. And that's where I started and really enjoyed it. And we did it as a family. So I would do the whole thing and then I had my wife and the kids doing it. And that evolved over time because I saw the positive results. Mm-hmm. And that then caused me to start to look at it and say, where can I go with this? And so I started, and it got to, my goal was to do my first Ironman before 50, which I did. And so since 2003, I've done at least one Ironman per year, except for 2020, since then. And the discipline of knowing that you have this event on this date, where if you do not train, you will be in massive agony and may do something bad, is what keeps me going for that daily get up. Oh, today is a run day, today is a bike day, today is a swim day. And that's what's really started it and what kept me going.
So there's loads of things I want to pick up about that, but let me ask you this. What about the day you don't feel like getting up and going out there and doing the bike run or swim?
So the thing about it is, and therein lies the beauty of, we can cheat on ourselves, but if we have a buddy in whatever fashion, that buddy will keep us going. So my wife and I, Tuesdays and Thursdays, those are our date nights, and we go for an hour-long swim on Tuesday evening and Thursday evening. So we walk, about a mile to the pool. We go for our swim, then we do hot tub therapy to warm up, and then we walk back up the hill because it's a differential of about 90 meters between where we live and where the pool is. So going down, we sort of up, and then so that keeps us going. And then for me, what I found is, because technology is a space where I live, that as things have evolved over time, if it's on my plan and it says, whether it's Training Peaks or now I use TriDot, whatever it happens to be, it's there and it says, do me. And it's like, okay, let's just get it done. And I think that's that discipline there. Now, obviously, if it's pouring rain and I'm supposed to do an outdoor bike or what have you, I'll pivot it or do things of that nature because you have some flexibility. But it's the discipline of having somebody, or in this case, something, hold you accountable. So that's how I deal with those challenges.
I love something you said very early on. You said that you read a book about triathlons for, was it ordinary mortals
Mortals.
or
Yes.
ordinary mortals?
Yeah.
And success is really ordinary people doing extraordinary things, isn't it?
Yes.
So tell me, what are some of the life lessons in what you've just said that people can apply to their work, to their health, to their training, to their commitment to family?
Well, this was I'll pick up on the last one because we have four children who are now 30, 32, 38, and 40. And when I started doing triathlons, I was working in consulting, and I was traveling anywhere from 150,000 to 250,000 miles a year. So it was a matter of commitment to my family to be away as little as possible. But I also had this sense of needing to be an example, to stay healthy, not to be one of these people who was grumpy. And what I found was that by doing the exercise, by being consistent, by taking a pair of running shoes along and a swimsuit whenever you travel. I couldn't take my bike all the time, obviously, but the other things, and that allowed me then to come back so that I was energized and present for my children, provided an example for them, and started them all in triathlon serendipitously when they were like 6, 7, 8. And we trained together as a family. We did these family activities, and then out of that, for example, we would create memories such as we would do 2-week bike trips, doing the Danube from its headwaters down to Vienna, doing Basel to Dusseldorf along the Rhine, things of that nature. So that was very much about keeping the process going because I needed to stay healthy, and I needed to stay healthy for my wife, for my kids, and for myself.
And also, you make a huge differentiation there between needing to stay healthy and wanting to stay healthy. Because when we change that one word, it changes everything, doesn't it?
It does. And I mean, I'm blessed in that my mother, even after a stroke in her early 80s, lasted to 88. My dad lasted to 98. I if I don't do something stupid, I have a pretty good runway ahead of me, but I can't do something stupid. And we have so many environmental toxins, what have you, et cetera, that by having Ironman, especially because it is a longer distance and requires a minimum of a 6 month training to focus on, and the rest of the time you're doing something. But it also keeps you attuned to what is going on in the world of medicine. What are the latest things? What works, what doesn't work, and really to understand that we are all an N of one. We all need to take responsibility for ourselves. This may work for this star or this run, what have you, but you have to try these things out and say, does this work for me? Test it out, see the results, make a note, and keep on going. And that's what I've done. And it then, as I say, stimulated me to become a certified personal trainer and ongoing activities there because I learned from my father lifelong learning. And that's what I'm about. And I really enjoy it. I mean, it's fascinating whether it's, great women thinkers of the Middle Ages, or it's the latest in triathlon gear or ideas or thinking about or what are training methods and using AI for training, for example, which has now been coming in the last year. All of those things just stimulate my brain, keep that going, but help me stay focused on staying healthy so that I'm there for my wife, my children, and now my grandchildren.
And we're not asking people to do the 26-mile run, but it is
No.
imperative that everybody incorporates some kind of healthy
Oh,
exercise
totally.
into their daily routine. And what you picked out there was to be successful in that, you need to set a goal, you need
Yes.
to commit, you
Yes.
need to put it in your plan. And that is
Yes.
so, so important. I write my exercise classes into my calendar four
Exactly.
times a week because
Yep.
otherwise something else would get written over
Gets
them.
in there. Totally.
Find a buddy, find a
Yes.
walking partner, find a swimming partner. My neighbor is so wonderful. So she's not employed in a paid role at the moment. My goodness, she's one of the busiest people I know. But I say to her, I can walk Wednesday at 2, and whatever time I
Yes.
give her,
Exactly.
she's the
Yep.
best friend in the world. She walks on my schedule. But it's so much more fun doing things with the body. And then the other thing you said I want everybody to ponder on is we have to be the model for the other people in our family that maybe aren't as motivated. We especially have to be the model for our children. And then taking it into the business world, we have to be the model for the other people on our team.
Yes. Exactly. Because if we don't have the energy to do the long days, very few of us can get by on 2.5 hours of sleep, like we know.
Like somebody we know. Yeah, yeah.
Like somebody we know. But but still, we have that, and on that point, just to that point, my wife and I have calendars. We share the calendar, and she plugs in 2 weeks in advance that we are going to walk for our daily walk or semi-daily walk, at this time on this day. And because that pops up, it's 3 o'clock, it's time to go walk. It's 4 o'clock, it's time to go walk. And if we do that, we're such creatures of habit that if we have it there, to your point, it will get done. If it's not on the calendar, it won't get done. If it's on the calendar, it will get done. Yes, absolute great.
And we're all creatures of habits that don't serve us as well. So we have
Oh,
to really
absolutely.
make sure that we plug in the ones that do serve us. So,
Right,
so, but you have built startup teams, supported startup teams across
right.
continents. What distinguishes a truly high impact, successful team from a simply competent one? What's the edge?
Great question. And I struggle with coming up with the infamous, there's one thing. But I will say that if there is one thing, then in my experience, it is the leader who has the vision and the energy and the commitment to this vision and then does what it takes to get it done. I have it's trite, it's been around forever. A people hire A plus people, B people hire C people. I remember encountering that the first time when I was in a corporate lawyer and seeing in a technology company how one engineering manager who was at a mid-level that was demotivating the really outstanding members of his team and moving them so they would quit the company, losing that resource, and instead having people who simply agreed with him. And as a result, seeing how that team got really stuck in mediocrity. The flip side of that was during COVID, having, for one of my clients, having a leader who had this vision for, we want to change the world for children, creating this screen-free environment for children and having the drive and the energy to communicate that across the team, that even though everybody was remote, he managed to bring everybody into that and keep them excited. So it doesn't matter. You would get texts at, not that I recommend it, but you could get texts at 8 o'clock on a Saturday evening if it was important. This is a launch here. There's things like this. You can't do that all the time. And one of the things I had to do with him was to make sure he looked after himself, health-wise, family, things. But I found, it sounds simple, but I see those companies where you have a visionary leader who leads by example. As soon as you get into the spending more money on the paintings in the boardroom than you do on healthcare or giving people a bonus at Christmas time or whenever, or doing little things, sort of, oh, here's a gift card to go take your wife out or husband out because you've been working extra. Those are the things where, again, where you have that enthusiastic, dynamic leader, you can really make amazing results happen. And the flip side is equally true. I have seen companies where it was one of those, you just saw how mediocrity came back into the firm, and and within 18 months they're gone.
Yeah. You used the word energy multiple times already,
Yes,
Reynold. It's so important that leaders don't just have a vision, but that they lead with passion and energy, because it's
yes,
infectious, isn't it?
yes, totally. If you just think about it, do you get excited by somebody who's got a pot belly sitting in a rocking chair smoking a cigar? Okay. No, you get excited by somebody who's out there. Well, maybe they're not doing Mavericks on the surfboard, but they're out there, they're active, they're doing things, they're visible, and you have this sense of energy and enthusiasm, positivism. It is that energy is also this positive energy, because I think one of the things that over my years, what I've really worked on consistently is how to get the negative people out of my life. Sometimes I've had to physically move. Sometimes I've taken different jobs. But if you have somebody that is negative, that person will drag down you, your family, and especially your marriage. Because if you're constantly dealing with this pick, and negativity, it just wears on you. And as a result, you lose the joy and the spontaneity, which is this energy. So I think it's this matter of managing the energy. And that's what Ironman is about. Ironman is about, I cannot manage the result. I can only manage the next 5 minutes. I have to stay in the moment. When I'm in the swim, I have to say, keep stroking, whatever, what's the water like, those kinds of things. I can't be worried about what the run is like. I know of a great guy who won Ironman Hawaii 3 times, and he said on the fourth time, he said, I knew my time was over because on my way back on the turnaround point, I was thinking about what was I going to have for lunch with my daughter the next day? And I realized I'd lost the focus.
That's so insightful, isn't it? And yet it's such a huge thrill to complete. My sister did her first marathon at 50, and then she did London and Dublin and
Yes,
Belfast.
good
And
for her.
but
Well done.
yeah, she did great, but now she's decided half marathons are just all she's going to do going forward. But again, I watched her and the discipline of preparing for those, but the thrill that you get
Yes.
when you complete. Um, I'm a great fan of Andy Stanley. I don't know if you listen to the Andy Stanley leadership podcast. His mantra is to help leaders get further faster.
Right.
But one of the things last week's was about gratitude and just
Oh,
picking up the point there. People need to be acknowledged,
yes.
the thank you, and it has to be specific. Thank you for completing that project with, tenacity, on time, whatever it was. But sometimes just the small gestures, like a small gift card, just something. People need to be appreciated, and good leaders seem to intuitively know to do that.
Yes, totally.
So, but on the other side of the fence, then when you're coaching a startup or coaching the leader and the leader's got a blind spot, how do you help them to see that blind spot?
I think one of the advantages of, I will call it maturity and a few more revolutions around the sun, is that you can be thoughtful but honest and direct. What I have found over the last 20 years especially is when I'm talking to these folks is to say, I don't do you any good by pretending stuff that's not there. I can only help you if I help you to identify what I see as opposed to what maybe you think you see. I often use the analogy that my daughter rather, for her master's thesis in art history, chose a very famous female painter, and she compared the painter's three self-portraits with three portraits that were done of her. And she looks at how the artist saw herself versus how others saw them. And I will use that as a starting point to say the Johari window, our biggest strength is our biggest weakness. And here is something I've observed.
Yes.
Right or wrong, this is something I've observed. Are you aware that you are doing this? And that way, by doing that, you can help them sit there and say, oh, I had no idea. Because to be fair, very often when you're dealing with younger, super energetic, often ADHD types, because that's often where you get these entrepreneurs, is
Mhm.
they're moving so fast that things are happening that they are simply not aware of. And when you pose it in that fashion where you allow them to see it for themselves, oh, I had no idea. Oh, of course, I would never mean to do that. Oh, all right. So when this happens in the future, here's, a little tickler for you that, think about this. So that's how I found most effective so that again, it's use motivational interviewing. You help them discover the things for themselves because when they discover it for themselves, then they internalize and all that good stuff, which you know very well from your own practice. So that's what I
Absolutely.
do.
And one of my favorite words is curious. And I'm just curious. I've noted a few times that you do or
Brilliant. Yes.
say or whatever. And then it's so non-threatening, but that's what we have to do as coaches, isn't it? Like you're
Yes.
constantly getting alongside people, but you're right. We don't serve them if we don't help them see where things aren't going right and how they're contributing to that.
And it's to that, just to pick on that, is that we don't do them any favors if we just sweep it under the rug. They can't grow if they don't realize, oh, I'm doing this and this is not working for me. It's one of those things. where I love technology, for example, is by now, if I'm doing a run analysis, I can see people on the treadmill, but I can also see people in the wild. And you take the video, the high-speed video, and you can show them how their foot strikes are going.
Mm.
And so you can say, okay, we're going to do these exercises to help you get your foot landing properly, get your stride right, things of that nature. And because you never noticed it. I had one classic one. My daughter was, as a teenager, she was changing, what have you. And it was that video that enabled her to see that she was doing well with one foot, but the other foot was wandering all over the place because she didn't have good hip stability because she was going through stuff as a teenager. So that's an example of where you identify the thing which they're not even aware of so that they can even run faster.
So, so important. Now, tell us more. You've got this new mission, and I don't know how new it is, but to support 10,000 women to come back into the workforce. What motivated that, and what have been some of the key challenges?
So that's a project that's been going on actually for quite some time. But it's it's something that I discovered uh, serendipitously after my 30th uh, alumni reunion. I'm the class secretary for the class of 76 at MIT. And I was starting to get these things of people who were suddenly in their early 50s, all of a sudden laid off and things changed, what have you, and the sort of the drive for youth. And where I noticed it then particularly, it was with women, and I saw it with my wife is what crystallized it, because my wife and I have done all of our degrees together. Met in college, we got married after college, did law school together, worked in law firms across the street from one another. Then we both shifted to corporate practice. We did our MBAs at night together, had our first two kids. She was general counsel for a $500 million shipping company for 12 years. We moved to Germany because of my career. She had to stop because she didn't have the working papers. And by then we had our third child, and then we had our fourth child. And then she had her mother have a stroke. And we recognized after about a year that her mother would have to come live with us. And so she had to, she'd been thinking about going back to work, but with her mother there coming to live with us, she had to take the next 21 years off, looking for her, after her, and for four of our kids. And she wanted to go back into the workforce, and she was back, coming back at age 60. And, here's, good colleges, all this career, all this experience, what have you. But it was oh, you haven't worked in 21 years, so you obviously must be brain dead. Can you type? I mean, and it so frustrated and angered me in a sense that I said, I need to do something. So what's happened is to really identify and work with, and these are always N of one. These are always N of one of what is the skill set that they have? What have they developed? Help them to get out of this idea of, I'm just this, pardon the French, I'm this dumb old lady who has no marketable skills. And getting that mindset change is the thing that has been the biggest, most interesting and the biggest challenge, to be honest. Because you have, and this is where the energy comes in, and it's very interesting. The ones who make the change and come back from that, and they can be 60, they can be 45, whatever it happens to be, but they can come back and do that if they have the proper support and if they have the motivation, what have you. The biggest challenge I find again is the world around them, whatever their environment is, very often is not terribly supportive. And so the biggest challenge there is helping them develop the informal support network, which is as important, because getting a job is a full-time job. And for many of these women, it's 10 to 12 months to find something really worthwhile. And when you're dealing with 99.9% rejection, that's very, very tough. So again, helping them build, what is their support group, how to use that, but then also to build a professional support group, people they can connect with, how to do the networking, how to build that out. and then do that. And that's been uh, it's been a labor of love because it's one of those, because very often those women are not in a position to pay, the what the rate really is, and help them to get that. So, it's one of those, that's my pro bono side.
Well, my pro bono side was during COVID. We were
Yeah.
concerned that social work, which is already a very challenging
Yes.
occupation, that social workers were having to go out with PPE and visit families where
Yes.
children were
Yes.
really concerned about children. And they were personally at risk in that environment, but they were also coping with all the things everybody else was coping with, which was homeschooling their own children, maybe
Oh,
looking
yes.
after an adult whose health was compromised. So the British Association of Social Workers set up a pro bono coaching service for any social workers who were needing a bit of support. So it's been so successful that 5 years later, we're still doing it. The wonderful thing is Taylor and Francis have just accepted our book proposal and
Oh,
we've got a whole book now, and I'm doing the
wow.
chapter on
Congratulations.
coaching
Well
social
done.
work leaders, which I'm
Yes.
very excited about because I felt it was really important that while frontline workers clearly needed support, that culture and motivation flows downhill. So I wanted to be sure that we looked after the social work leaders in that context as well. But it's such rewarding work. Like I know you
Yes.
find the work with your professional women so rewarding as well.
Right.
And I guess a lot of what you're doing then, as well as building the informal support groups and trying to support corporations to be more supportive, it's all about mindset work as well, isn't it? It's
Yes.
about helping them remember just how many skills they have, looking at their strengths, building on their strengths, turning off the voice in their head,
Right.
and
Exactly.
remembering that what other people think, all those cliches, but they're so important, aren't they? What other people think isn't any of their business. It's
Right.
them building for themselves. But it's also not taking rejection personally, because rejection really is. I coached somebody last week who had been for something like 6 interviews in as many weeks.
Right.
And, trying to help people to see, well, maybe you're just not, it wasn't the right fit. It wasn't that you did anything wrong. So, what are some of the techniques and strategies you use to help people overcome the little negative voice in their own head?
I'll go back to eliminating negativity in your life.
Mhm,
All
mhm.
right. That's the first and biggest thing, because if you can eliminate the negativity and see that every no is a step closer to a yes, and change that mindset and reframe the conversation, then that's the biggest thing. Okay. But you then need to have the habit of doing that. And that's where this informal group is plays such an important part. The group that, in my wife's case, what she found, what was critical, is she has a Monday night life group that she has of women, where they talk about a book, and they get together every Monday night, and they are doing life together. And in that group, she gets the positivity that she's a wonderful, special human being. Now, we just we start the day by saying prayers for each other, for our children, and things of that nature. So we've been doing that now for the last 15 plus years. Again, an affirmation, a daily affirmation by the people who are closest to you, and finding a way to do that. So you have that support group, you have that. And by doing that, what we saw, for example, was by applying that, my youngest son stepped from finance into sales. And he had, as an SDR, his job was to make 150 to 300 calls per day to try to get a meeting, 10 meetings a month. But again, it was for him that we would sit down almost every day about how he had gone, oh, this clever new idea, these kinds of things, what have you. And after a time, he got to the point where he was excited by how many weird ways did I get turned down? You know, it's like how, so that he saw that as a positive. So I think this is the thing that goes back to with people when they're dealing with this, because finding a job, and this is the biggest challenge I have, is getting people into a mindset, and that's where Ironman really helps. It's at least 6 months. Okay. You
Mhm.
have to do 3 swim, 3 bike, 3 run per week for the next 6 months so that you're ready to go. You are going to do 3 interviews today. You're going to do 3 emails tomorrow. You're going to make 3 Zoom calls on Friday. Again, getting people into the habit and the rhythm where you sit there saying, "Wow, I got a lot done today. Okay, I cleaned up the garage. I got these books done. I sold this. Finding ways to keep the positivity in their life,
Yeah.
because that's the only way you get that meaning making machine that's going like this all the time, of shutting it down and replacing it by positive stuff.
And when I coach, I always do accountability coaching. So I
Oh,
have
yes.
people
Mhm.
fill in a form, and it starts with 5 successes since the
Yes.
last call. And
Yeah.
people struggle, they struggle to actually identify what a win is. And then, so part of my coaching approach is to help people start to see the little wins and compound them some more,
Yes.
and then
Yes.
build that muscle. Because all
Yes.
you're talking about, whether it's Ironman or mindset, we're constantly building a muscle
Right.
that's training every day. And then they start to see the wins. And then you can see them blossom and grow. I mean, quite recently, I coached someone who'd been off on stress leave for 3 months, back to work, reframed the whole work experience,
Yeah.
got a positive job interview, decided that wasn't what she wanted, was confident enough to turn it down,
Right.
and now is working towards saving enough for a sabbatical in 6 months to find who she really is. Do you know? And it's like, that's her success story because she got closer and closer and closer all the time to who she is at her core, to
Yeah.
being happy with herself. And that's all any of us want, because then we ripple that happiness and positivity out into everybody around us.
Right. I had the sort of an event that sort of pops into my mind. I had one of my sons was 10, and he'd just been diagnosed with ADHD, and he came home one day and said, "Everybody in class hates me." And when you're dealing with a 10-year-old, it's almost like, okay, so let's parse this down. And what happens was, but I know you get along with this one, or this one, and by the time we got through about a 15-minute conversation, we got it down to the fact that he wasn't getting along with 2 boys who weren't that enthusiastic with him. I said, that's 2 out of 24. I said, those are pretty good odds. You don't have to sit next to them. Sit next to the people you like. And it was one of those, you know, and the next day it was like, yeah, I had a great day, love it. Everybody in class loves me. It was like, okay.
And it's that reframing. And when we
Yeah.
coach, it's providing that safe psychological space to reframe what's really happening. Tony Robbins always talks about reframe the problem in solvable terms,
Yes.
which is so important. So, as we wrap up, which has been an amazing session, thank you so much. What's the
Thank
next
you.
challenge, Reynold? What excites you for the future?
Well, I do have on July 5th, 2026, I have my next Ironman. That'll be number 28. And looking forward to that. That'll be in Germany. So that'll be an opportunity to, spend some time with my oldest sister and her family, and Laura will be there as well. Uh, Interesting things, Laura and I are taking this time to sort of look at different events, and I have a couple of interesting business events that we have coming up. meetings in Chicago or New York. But we're also on the personal side, labyrinths and the sacred walk is something that's important to us, and we've been active in getting that as part of life at Wellesley and somewhat at MIT and other places like the YMCA of the Adirondacks on Lake George, and our own church here in Palo Alto. But the guy who came and helped refresh it and put the lines back because they do wear after time has this 1 week trip to Gotland in the North Sea, and they apparently have 40 labyrinths that are over 100 years old. So
Wow.
we're going to take a week just to go to Gotland, which is, Visby, which is on the World Heritage Site there of UNESCO, and just go and focus on that sort of thing. So those are the things, and then of course, we're hopeful for the next wedding. We still have one wedding to go, and we still are enthusiastically waiting for the next grandchildren. So aside from that, and on the personal front, the professional front, I'm also planning to do at least one book on recruiting, helping people, with recruiting issues. So write that book, and I have that as a challenge from Adam Coffey to do that. So, we'll go from there.
Well, life is good.
It's awesome. It is totally awesome. And as a really totally awesome to have our four children invite Laura and myself to go with them for a week to Hawaii for Christmas, I think is the most, is a situation where, we try to have that family time and really appreciate that time because every day is a gift.
And that's a fabulous tribute to you and Laura as parents.
Thank you, Will. I will, as I say, I always like to say, I will defer when it comes to the family things. Laura's been the one who's just has this incredible uh, energy for this. But I also like to say God has a wonderful sense of humor because she's the third generation of two girls only, and as a result, she wound up with three boys and one girl. So
There you go. Reynold, thank you so much for sharing all those amazing insights with us today.
thank you so much, Lynn. It's been a delight, and we'll look forward to perhaps whenever getting to Ireland here in the not too distant future as well.
But you're very welcome. There's always a bed for you here.
Thank you so much. You have a wonderful day and a great holiday season.
Thank you. So many great insights there into the effective characteristics of leadership, whether it's personal fitness or a work project. Reynolds said we have to set a goal and plan for it. Then we have to commit to it, and we do that by putting it in the calendar and just doing it. As leaders in our family and in our work and in our community, we have to model discipline and commitment and self-care for those who look up to us. And he said the difference between good and great startups is down to leadership. Great leaders are visionaries who bring positive passion and energy to the table, who show up and get things done, and who empower and acknowledge their people. As a coach, Reynolds serves senior leaders by helping them to see their blind spots and encouraging them to think about doing things differently. And he reminds us that we do not serve people by avoiding the tough issues. And then we talked about navigating a return to the workplace, or maybe even just a switch to a different career. It's so important that we have specific supports. And those could include mindset coaching, which helps you to quiet the little negative voice in your head and encourages us to acknowledge and build on strengths and accomplishments. You also need informal support networks, which are critical in building self-esteem and also a sense of belonging. So again, we all need to be part of a community. And then he was really emphatic about eliminating negative people and staying away from negative environments. As an engineer, no surprise, Reynold always has a project in mind, and he's currently looking forward to his 28th Ironman in Germany and also to writing his next book. So, my challenge for you this week is to identify what life opportunity is passing you by because you're not all in, not fully committed. Is it a relationship? Is it a project? Is it a healthier lifestyle? Reevaluate today, make a plan, put the times and events in your diary, and get started. Because, as we all know, success is never accidental.